Record. Okay, hello, people of the internet. Ian Alter, the Freedom Astrologer, again here sitting with Donny, and we're doing another one, psychic indicators, spiritual gifts kind of video. And we want to bring you, let's say, more deeper things. We want to say and we want to share more about how to see, how to know if you have these gifts, and what's this all about. Let's go a little bit deeper. This time.
I think this can be a series, is it?
Yeah, I think we'll do more than just one, and we'll go through a lot of different capabilities, and we'll start today with clairvoyance. And we'll look at what clairvoyance is and what are some of the, let's say, astrological configurations to look at, and what are, let's say, the real world examples or real world things to keep a lookout for as well. So maybe Donny, you can ease us into it a little bit.
Well, when I think about like declare capabilities, I mean, this can be like clairvoyance, clairaudience, claircognizance, and clairsentience, just to name a few more like more popular ones. When I think about clair abilities or capabilities, these are more of like psychic sensory perception and non-linear ways of perceiving the world. And it's part and parcel of being an empath. And I think that all of us will have part and parcel of those capabilities that's embedded in our chart within us. Whether we use it or not is a whole other story, or be fearful of it even, because I've actually seen people just totally denying that part of themselves. And what I find really interesting is that usually when we talk about people who are embracing their clair capabilities and abilities, somehow or another along the way, there's perhaps a childhood that can be potentially chaotic or fragmented. And when I say this, it's not always something that is really dramatic or traumatic, so to speak. It can be that in some cases, perhaps the parents were always absent when you were growing up, and you had to grow up alone, and hence you kind of tune into the invisible world more and more and more to kind of counterbalance or serve as a coping mechanism of how you deal with your life here on Earth.
And maybe even how you cope with that loneliness as well, because as a young child, it's hard to at times spend longer periods alone, and connecting to those realms actually helps to cope with that time period.
Because the thing is that after we did our first video on like psychic and intuitive significators in the chart, I've received some emails from clients, and within those emails, they actually state what is the environment that they grew up in. And it's very interesting that they all have somewhat of that path in which they walk to kind of make them evolve to such a state whereby they actually embrace those psychic intuitive abilities that's embedded in their chart quite a bit. So let's start with the definition of clairvoyance, shall we?
Yeah, that's a good one.
So when we talk about clairvoyance, it's actually an ability to experience an intuitive imprint or image in one's mind's eye. And when we talk about mind's eye, is very much talking about the third eye chakra. So things like the sun, moon, and Mercury are very much involved when we talk about clairvoyance, for example. And when someone has a clairvoyant capability or latent talent, so to speak, they can see something like a symbolic imagery relating to a past or future event. And this vision usually serves the purpose of enhancing one's insight regarding a person or circumstance. For some, it's like looking at a silent movie while in an altered or meditative state. And since we're talking about an altered or meditative state, somewhat Pisces is being put into this picture.
Oh, very much, yeah.
Yeah, and this clair ability or talent is usually activated by the development of the third eye chakra. And third eye chakra traditionally is ruled by the sun and moon because sun and moon represents each one of the eyes. But it's also somewhat, I find, related to things like Uranus, Jupiter, and Neptune as well, this tree, because of the non-linear, prophetic, and intuitive characteristics that's linked to the third eye chakra as a whole. And when one is utilizing this form of psychic perception, this clair ability, one is working with visionary skills. So again, somehow or another, Pisces is being pulled into the equation. And when we talk about something prophetic and visionary, both like Jupiter and Neptune are involved. And last but not least, people with clairvoyance are often referred to as seers because they can see certain things. Mm-hmm. Because clairvoyance, in short, is really another term for clear seeing. So do you have anything to add to that?
I want to say a little bit about, because I think you mentioned beautifully the part of future and past. Right. I would maybe even add a little bit of the present. You know, sometimes the clairvoyant can see into the situations in the life of the person they're, let's say, meeting with or being with, and seeing what is actually going on in the moment in their lives on a very, very deep level, I would say, as well. And one thing here with this clairvoyance thing that I had to learn in my own life at times, quite annoyingly, maybe, is it's because it's a lot of the times we're shown potentials of things. Let's say, especially when we're talking about the future part of this clairvoyance,
right?
Is sometimes we're shown a potential that still has, let's say, a probability of changing in the future. So I think this is also one area to mention. I know it's getting a little bit difficult and deep, but it's still something to have in mind, let's say, to consider when you start to open up these realms, that not everything all the time is 100%, you know, set in stone. Let's say that the images or the things that are shown to you or that you can, you know, see, like Donny said there. So just keep that in mind, that we're dealing with potentials and energy potentials especially when we're looking at into the future as well.
Yeah, and also to add to that, when I think about clairvoyant messages, as I mentioned earlier, this can arrive as an image or like a silent movie scene in your mind. It can be literal, but it also can be very metaphoric as well. Like you got to read the meaning into it. Sometimes it's not just like play as it happens, but there's like, you have to think about how are you going to process things after, you know, you experience that. And I would say many people who are having this clairvoyant ability, they usually discredit their abilities here as like a daydream, wandering of the mind, wishful thinking, or even their imagination. And sometimes fantasy, they may not even realize that, Yeah. This kind of leads me to the point where what are the more subtle and the more concrete signs that you need to look out for to call yourself someone that has clairvoyant abilities. I've actually looked at certain charts of my friends leading to this discussion. And one thing that I wrote down as one of the signs that that a person is perhaps clairvoyant is that they tend to use the phrase "I see" it very subconsciously. Because when we talk about clair abilities, it's usually very much a subconscious process. We may not even know it. And a few of my friends actually, when I talk to them, they usually tell me like, I see this, I see this, I see this, when it's, you know, something that's totally different. Yeah. And usually,
sorry.
yeah. Go ahead. And usually like visions, images, colors, symbols, and mentally driven videos come to you in your mind's eye. There's almost like flashes of light and color often serve as signs if you have like clairvoyant abilities as well.
I want to mention a little bit, you know, the sometimes the symbology and the craziness of the fantasy side of that, because some of these images or let's say pictures or, you know, moving videos, they can seem almost like too crazy. Like it's almost hard to make sense of like why is this being shown to me, you know, things like that. But very often what I've seen is when you give that message to, you know, usually the person next to you needs to be in a bit of an open space to be able to receive that. But when you give that to them, they're kind of like, first and like, oh, okay. And then, some like a light bulb goes on. Like you might even not know what this kind of weird image or scenery is about, but the person sitting next to you can, you know, you can open something up when you say or give that message to them.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually talked to quite a number of people who are like working as psychics around me, and I asked them what's their earliest memory of knowing that they've got clairvoyant abilities. And for the more like concrete signs, some have actually reported that or told me that they see like mist, fog, light, or colors that others can't see. And then they later realize that they're actually they're able to notice other people's auras and energy field as well. And this is also one of the indication. But all of them have one thing in common, is that they have very good imagination. Because it's almost like they are very, because when I talk about clairvoyant ability, is a very like air sign kind of clair ability, in which you get bits and pieces of message coming from all over, and then you got to organize that into something cohesive. And I find that actually nearly all of my friends who have this clair ability in their charts, they are very good at puzzles. They can just put things together, and pretty good problem solving as well, abilities within them. And see, because they are just very good at seeing how different pieces of the puzzle fit together nicely. And I think it brings me back to that air sign quality for this clairvoyant linkage that I see. Yeah. Anything you want to add to that?
I'm not sure. I'm already the seeing and the thing already led me to kind of like the next part we also discussed is the dream life.
Very much so, because I think it's tied to the imagination.
That's the thing there, yeah.
The daydreaming, and also like usually people who who have some facets of clairvoyant capabilities, they have frequent, active, or vivid dreams as well.
I've seen this a lot, and one of the things I want to mention to you guys is like a lot of people I've spoken to and seen is like the dream side is very often like almost disregarded as the clairvoyant part. But I want to just emphasize this part because there are different dreams. Some dreams are like more subconscious stuff coming up, and some dreams are like, you know, even communication with you know, spirits. But very often one of the types of dreams is seeing images. Again, you know, the clairvoyant part of this is seeing images and situations in the future. Now, I know a lot of people very, you know, earthly grounded, you know, doing, you know, corporate work and stuff like that, who have these dreams and they kind of disregard that part of themselves of like, oh no, I'm not clairvoyant, I can't see anything. But then they receive these kind of like literal images of things that are going to happen in the future. And, you know, day later, 2 weeks later, you know, stuff happens exactly like they were shown in the dream. So guys, you know, don't disregard that, you know, power, I would say. And, you know, if you have these vivid dreams, I would suggest to write these down, or if you can't write them down, record them in your phone, or, you know, get your kind of mind and consciousness wrapped around it, that this is a very, very potent place where you can receive information, you can get information, you can see images, you can see, you know, all this. It doesn't always have to be the future, but you can see, you know, a lot there that's useful.
Yeah, this brings me to my next point, that if I were to just pinpoint which planet is particularly pronounced for people who have clairvoyance, is actually Neptune.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because Neptune is really the god of the sea, Poseidon, and it's really about that extrasensory observation. But Neptune is also about daydreaming and your dream world, which is very much what we just mentioned, you know. So there's this kind of discernment issue, whether you think that it is really like something that's clairvoyant, or is it just kind of BS, you know, on the other hand. So do you want to start talking about the astro significators?
I want to mention one thing before. It's a very short one.
Okay.
And let's
Sure.
one of the things you can also, let's say, start noticing if you have, let's say, if you want to know that you have these capabilities or powers, however you want to say, is when you're, let's say, in a place, specific place of, let's say it's a city, or it's a building, or it's you know, it's a beach, you know, whatever the place is, or a store, or an old building. And in that old building, you start suddenly seeing, you know, kind of images, or you know, stuff starts running in your mind. Again, this is a kind of like a hint to you that you actually have these capabilities, and you're most likely seeing things that have happened in the past in those places, or even might happen that you're seeing into the future, or tapping into the potentials in the place as well. Yeah, that was one of the things.
I think from my personal experience is that I dream of places that I'll be in a few years' time. And then when I actually sit in that place, and then this kind of split-second realization that, wait, but I've been here.
Like
in my dream.
like a deja vu feeling.
Like a deja vu. It can bring along like feelings of that as well. And so like there's part of like, okay, like, but for me, it usually comes to me not in my conscious mind. Usually when I see forward, it's usually in my dreams. Yeah. So that's like tidbit of what's inside me.
Very good.
And I was just thinking that although this clairvoyance thing is a lot regarding the air element faculty, which is about getting like messages and all that. But the main planet that is tied to clairvoyance is actually Neptune. So I can't help but put together like the water trinity in people's chart as well. And when we talk about the water trinity, you know, like the Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, and the houses that are related to the 4th, 8th, and 12th. And the planet that rules them. So like the moon for Cancer, but also the lunar nodes as well. That can be very powerful. For Scorpio, it will be mostly Pluto. And for Pisces, like what I mentioned earlier in this video, will be Jupiter and Neptune. Somewhat those are involved when you have clairvoyant abilities. Yeah. But I think the main planet here would be Neptune, because Neptune is like a psychic sponge. And, you know, just to reiterate, like the dreams, the dream time and all that really comes together with it.
Yeah, so just to maybe reaffirm, Neptune in the water houses, 4th, 8th, and 12th, and in the water signs especially, you need something for you to look out for.
Or water sign south node.
Water sign, yeah.
Or
like Scorpio,
south node.
Yeah.
Or south node in 4th, 8th, 12th.
Definitely.
Or south node aspecting moon, Pluto, perhaps a water sign, Jupiter, and Neptune. Those I would find that those will be also markers that someone might be clairvoyant in a way. Or how about stelliums?
Like I want to say one thing about Scorpio and 8th house a little bit again. I know I'm a bit hard on Scorpios and 8th house stuff. Sometimes I do. I agree. But the reason why I want to mention it is whenever there's something in the Scorpio or 8th house, let's say even a south node in the 8th, or Neptune in the Scorpio, is people tend to suppress these gifts a lot, and they're scared of these gifts more than, let's say, when it's in Cancer or when it's in Pisces. You know, Pisces sometimes can dissolve things, but still the Scorpio is so much afraid of these things. Not always, but something for you to consider if you're kind of having those kind of fears about even getting messages, or I don't know, maybe I'm not getting, but you're seeing that you have south node in the 8th. I know a person who has south node in the 8th, and they literally, at first they were really hesitant, and they're like, oh no, I can't, I don't know, maybe I have these powers, I don't know. And then when they started opening these things, they really quickly started seeing auras, like really quickly actually.
Interesting.
Yeah, stellium, sorry, go please. Yeah,
like stellium in the water houses can be like an indication, but just piggybacking off what you said regarding Scorpio and Pluto, when I see Pluto particular in the sign of Scorpio or in someone's 8th house, they have a natural awareness of energy and other planes. And when Pluto is aspected by Neptune, because we have all people who are born in the second half in the 1900s, they all have Pluto-Neptune sextile. So that's a given. But if somehow Mars is also involved, clairvoyance can be seen as well. That's what I've taken note of.
do you feel like the Mars is making it more sharp, or Yeah, I'm curious about the Mars.
Yeah, because it's just piercing through the veil. Mars helps to, because if you think about the gilf of Mars, it's really that phallic symbol, right? That's like the arrow just shoots right at you, and you can just pierce through like, oh, okay, this is what it is. Mars actually serves for easier identification of things around you. Like there's this kind of, you tap into your gut instinct and you can say, oh, okay, like this is what it is. It gives an outlet of like, so you're not just drowned in the ocean kind of feeling.
Like clear
And
cutting.
yeah, just cutting through all the fog and mist. Mars actually helps to do that. And particularly, I find that a 12th house stellium is very much of a clairvoyant indicator, on top of being in the 8th, and to some extent the 4th as well. Why do I say the 12th house stellium is more important here? Because it's almost like they have the ability to contact higher levels of existence. And it's quite apparent when I see charts with a 12th house stellium.
I want to mention here one thing about the 12th house stelliums, because I know, again, I'm bringing in the person is when there was Saturn was involved there was kind of like this apprehension a little bit with going towards that area, although the stellium was there, you know, and the person was already, like, let's say in their more practical material life, they were already, you know, working in those like kind of behind the scenes areas. The spiritual thing was a bit of a you know, hesitancy. So Saturn or Scorpio sometimes can bring that kind of oh, I don't know, maybe I won't go, you know. Then you need to kind of cultivate more courage and, you know, just go into your fears, basically. Unfortunately, if you want to kind of open those areas.
Yeah, and since we're talking about the clear seeing, which is clairvoyance, so I can't help but also touch on Uranus as well, because Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury, which is the natural zodiac ruler of the 3rd house. And when I see Uranus in the 12th house, especially when it's well expected, clairvoyance can also be seen as well. Yeah. And going back to the 3rd house energy, as we mentioned in the previous video, the moon is having planetary joy in the 3rd house. And this is the house of what we call the high priestess energy. And so like you can see how many planets and how many different configurations can point to some form of clairvoyance. And I think as we move on from like clairvoyance to other clair videos, you will find that there's bound to be a lot of overlapping.
There's so much overlap, and also if you, let's say, if you notice yourself having one clairvoyant ability, you most likely there's, you know, positions that, you know, indicate that you have more than one, you know, the things we're going to discuss in the next videos. But so just, you know, don't put the box there too much, you know, put yourself into a box, you know. You can there's more openness.
I think once you have in your chart that tells you that you're clairvoyant, there's bound to be other clair abilities that comes with it as well. But when we talk about clairvoyance as a standalone, it's very much talking about the 3rd eye chakra. And it's one of the upper chakras. And you can't talk about the 3rd eye chakra without talking about the throat chakra, which is ruled by Mercury. So it's all interlinked and all that. I was just thinking about the ascendant signs. that someone might have that gives like a preliminary indication that they may have some form of clairvoyant abilities. And I've identified some ascendant signs, that is. One of them is a Sagittarius rising, which is Jupiter ruled. Pisces rising as well, another Jupiter root sign, but also co-ruled by Neptune. Scorpio rising, definitely. Particularly for Scorpio rising, because the second house for Scorpio rising is Sagittarius, which can give some form of like far-fetched seeing ability as well. And when we go back to Mercury, like the quality of Mercury, I'm going to talk by element, by house and aspects to certain planets. I particularly find that if Mercury is in the water signs, in the 8th and 12th house, and if there's a Mercury-Neptune aspect, be it a trine, sextile, conjunction,
yeah.
For people who like to use the lesser known aspects, the quintile, the biquintile, and opposition aspect, those can represent some form of those capabilities within you or latent talent. Or when Neptune is in the first house, aspecting your Mercury, it can also bring that as well. But when Neptune is in the first house, you gotta check for whether is it well aspected, because when it's well aspected, this can really grant very powerful clairvoyant capabilities. This is on top of being like empathic, precognizant, besides being clairvoyant, of course. People with Neptune in the first house can also be they can travel unconsciously as an astral projection and travel pretty well. But as with Neptune, you gotta be careful, because you can be jolly well swimming in a calm sea, and then when all the big waves come and you'll be just swept away and you'll be helpless. And people with Neptune in the first house here can be very prone to psychic attack. And I must also mention that what we're talking now, it's about natal chart placements, but I've also seen that people who have particularly Pisces rising, they have transit Neptune passing in their first house. And this can really sensitize them a lot, quite a bit. And they may experience, they may actually feel that they're going crazy all the time. Do you have any Pisces rising friends?
I do.
So transit Neptune has been passing their, like, you know, in their first house, and is, you know, they probably have lots of stories to tell.
Especially like it's almost when the Pisces is rising and the Neptune goes into the first, it's like Pisces rising is almost anyway going into those other realms, almost, you know, you're sitting on the couch and just, you know, boop, and they're connected to those other realms. But now, you know, Neptune goes into the first, and that can be just like I don't know, like
I think it just makes
Pisces on steroids or something.
I think it just makes their auric feel very porous and permeable, if that's the correct word.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I think about Neptune, it's a very diffusive kind of energy. And hence, like, because I got a few friends who are Pisces rising, and what they've told me is like they easily find themselves being overwhelmed by, like, the slightest thing can become a trigger for them.
Yeah, I think that one of the reasons is they're so spongy in a way. They take so much from everywhere, like feelings, emotions, thoughts, images. Everything comes their
And
way very
mostly
much.
it's not theirs.
Yeah,
They're just soaking in from everyone else, and they're just kind of, when they're not used to it, when Neptune comes in and transit their first house, it just becomes like this. On one hand, it can be very aesthetic if you want to experience that, but it can be super freaking scary.
I actually want to now. I have one thing that I've actually given to more Pisces people. Well, even when you have strong Sun or Moon Pisces, that everything is coming your way, and you're kind of spongy, and you're taking it in. If you can't take time off from that space or moment, let's say you're in a public space or whatever, and you notice yourself getting overwhelmed, what you can do is just, like, in your mind's eye or in your mind, just ask, like, what am I actually experiencing? What is the thing that I'm feeling? And
Right.
what are what images are mine? What is mine? And then, like, let it sink in a little bit, and then ground yourself in that energy, and you will notice yourself, let's say, getting a little bit clearer, and the anxiety and everything gets a little easier. Let's put it that way.
I think, like, because Pisces and also Neptune is about obliterating any boundaries, right? And hence, like, when I see someone with a Saturn Neptune aspect, particularly hard aspects, it's very hard for them to, like, it's almost like their boundaries become more porous and permeable. And so you're letting things in that's not yours, and your defenses are weakened in that way.
Yeah.
And so it goes back to that, porosity, and also, like, that permeability, because things can just easily or more easily diffuse into you that's not yours. And this kind of brings me to the next astro significator natally, for someone who has, like, clairvoyant abilities, like Neptune in the first house, third house, and 12th house, or somehow Neptune is aspecting the luminaries, the sun and moon, or Mercury that's in the third house, or Neptune is aspecting the third house ruler. It can also bring that as well.
Maybe even I would add Neptune is aspecting the ascendant ruler as well sometimes.
Oh yes, definitely. It just makes it even more, like, more permeable and porous, like the auric field. When we actually go to the moon, which is one of the luminaries, moon in the third house, for example, in aspect to the outer planets, and this one I've wrote like Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, because it really gives that moon a more kind of otherworldly connection as well, which can help one to actually see things that's, or like their sensory perception becomes very attuned to the invisible realm as well.
Definitely, and I mean the moon in the third. I mean that's the one of the biggest ones. Anyway, if you have that, there's almost no way you don't have these capabilities. Those outer planets will kind of even make it bigger, make the messages even more exact, more precise. I'm sorry, I have noise behind my window, so I have to mute myself.
No, it's fine. And how about and by the way, when we mentioned about houses, it's not only Placidus houses. You can switch back and forth between whole sign house system and also Placidus. When we talk about the houses that we are mentioning in this video. And next one, actually, I want to talk about like quality of Jupiter, because Jupiter is the co-ruler of Pisces. And Jupiter, particularly in water signs, that's aspecting to planets in the third house or third house ruler, or to Sun, Moon, Mercury, can also bring some kind of clairvoyant capabilities as well.
Oh, that again, we're repeating, or I'm repeating the things, but again, the water houses like that, Jupiter in the 12th and the 8th. I'm a little bit discovering Jupiter in the 9th, but I think there's still a connection there as well. So,
because 9th house is really like it's the natural domain of Sagittarius, and it's about that far seeing into the future energy. And so if like Jupiter is in a 9th house in a water sign, I find that there can also be as an indicator. And the more indicators, the more tendency you can develop such skills. That means it's at your disposal. It's whether you want to develop it further and use it.
I think that's super important, guys. Like, it doesn't mean like when you have Jupiter in the 12th, maybe Neptune in the 12th, whatever you have, it doesn't immediately mean like you're going to be doing psychic readings every day. It's still your choice if you're going to use it, especially, professionally helping others. Yeah. And you need to develop these, you need to get better at them. So please keep that in mind as well.
Or, I mean, for most people, it may be just using to navigate their own lives.
Exactly. Journey. It doesn't have to be, a psychic reader,
It certainly is a great help, though. Imagine just bypassing all those stuff and just like getting to know, like, okay, this is what it is. And,
Like, for example, I just want to bring in a more practical and material example again with, me. And what we're kind of discussing as well now. Let's say you have these vivid dreams and you have these vivid, let's say, sometimes openings into the future. Now, one of the things how I have personally managed to use this to my advantage is I've seen, the market movements in my dreams, and I've seen even the results of sporting events in my dreams, and I've used it actually to make a little bit more money for myself. So you can see how these things actually, it doesn't have to only be very vivid futuristic dreams or images of some distant 100-year future. It can be really practical things that you can actually use to benefit your life, as well.
Yeah, and I think we've touched on the South Node particularly because it's the gifts that we are gifted with in the earlier part of our lives. So South Node in the 8th and 12th house, South Node in the water signs as well may help a lot.
Oh, yes.
And stellium or heavy concentration of planets in the 8th and 12th house, those can help. We haven't talked about Venus.
You bring it.
And I find that when the moon is in Taurus or Libra, which is a Venus-ruled moon, when it's aspect to Neptune, it can also bring some facets of clairvoyance into the picture as well. Because the higher octane of Venus is Neptune. And so if your moon, which is your sensory perception, your subconscious habits and capabilities and all that, is in a Venus root sign and is aspecting Neptune, this can really bring like a very one of them will be clairvoyant gifts, but it also gives kind of like a very ethereal way of looking at things in which you're more receptive in a way. And last but not least, I've got ascendant ruler in aspect to the outer planets.
Would you say, like we discussed this a little bit now, easier or harder aspects? Can you say a little bit about this?
I would say preferably a mix. If it's only hard aspect, you may feel that life has no choice, but you'll be pushed to certain scenarios which you feel very uncomfortable developing. those skills, even if it's like, the planets sync up to kind of give you that gift. Or it may be just disowned in a past life. I've also seen that as well. If you're only given hard aspects to work with, you somehow have this innate tension within you, or be it through outer circumstances that make you go that way and develop it.
They're like life pushes
I think
you
it all depends on where your soul's evolution is in terms of journey. I mean, of course, when we talk about like sextile and trine, those come really easy for you without much effort, but those may be earned from previous lifetimes.
I want to mention with this, the easier ones, I want to mention the grand trine in water as well.
Yes.
Because, it's a pretty, popular one. We can maybe say that, because it's a pretty, the gift comes pretty easily, especially when there's personal planets involved as well, with a mixture of outer planets, for example, one example comes to mind with Pluto involved, Mercury involved, and Moon involved, all in water signs. So this person actually is very, very gifted in this area, gets a lot of images, gets so many images and information of actually, received, let's say, the information from this person, and it's very accurate, I would say. But it's still, what I want to say about this, there is a tendency of like, shall I use it, or like, it's so evident, it's like, there's not much work put into it at times as well.
Yeah, it's not much motivation.
That's a good word.
Yeah.
Like motivation. It's like so self-evident that the person can take it for granted as well. So, be on the lookout for that. But generally, it's a very, very, let's say, a strong indication that you have a lot of clairvoyant gifts there.
I think also, besides a grand trine, I think a kite will be very helpful as well. Because a kite is a grand trine, but one of the triangle has an opposition. That's why it forms like that kite. And this gives it some tension, like a mixture of what I mentioned earlier, like a mixture of easy and hard aspects, so that your journey will be supported, but yet you need some push via the hard aspects, which is opposition for the kite. Or it can be that your water grand trine has got some squares, which gives it some kind of spice that keeps you moving. And the last one would be like if there's a mystic rectangle involving the 8th and 12th house rulers, or the shape involves, if you're using Placidus, involves the 8th and 12th house, and you throw in some personal planets like Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, with some of the outer planets like Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, but also would consider Jupiter as well, because it's the co-ruler of Pisces, into the mix. And if you've got this mixture of planets involved, I also want to add in Chiron as well, because Chiron is also an intuitive indicator. And when it's like in that shape, like a mystic rectangle, that it can really bring out certain connection to the invisible realm as well, which particularly if you have one of the corners of the mystic rectangle touching planets in the 12th house or the 12th house ruler, this can really give you a more like rich and vivid dream life, which can be a precursor for you to kind of, there's something more there, like a clairvoyant ability embedded somewhere there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because the dream life is, because it's so, let's say, even, science, our left brain kind of world is like, yeah, the dreams are real in a way, that we have dreams, that the scientific world isn't denying it or suppressing that. So it's easier for people to start in those dream realms, let's say writing down dreams and like noticing, oh, this is happening in my dreams, and oh, this is happening in my life as well.
Right.
That can open, like it's like a gateway drug into like the other gifts and powers, let's say, areas.
Talking about that, how about Pluto in the first house, be it conjunct ascendant or in the first house, Placidus or whole sign house system? And Pluto being heavily aspected, this can also bring some form of clairvoyant abilities. It may be latent because it's Pluto, but it can certainly be developed if you choose to.
This is important. I'm waving my finger because this is really important with Pluto. I think with Pluto and Scorpio, it's super important in my mind and experience to start really getting comfortable with your fears and like your wounds and deep things that are stopping you from doing these things. And that's the development part of that, because once you start being really comfortable with this let's say hard energy and feeling energy, it's easier for you to venture into these realms, because in these realms there are new things that you haven't experienced, new sensations, new feelings. And a lot of the times, again, I'll bring a real life example in. Let's say you go into a dream realm and let's say an ancestor comes in those realms to give you a message. Now, the first indication can be really like scary, because they're passed on and they're in the other realms, and now they're giving you a message, and that can bring a lot of fear because our mind is scared of these things. But once
Right.
you're really kind of comfortable in your body and are skilled in your feeling, let's say experience or feel, let's say even like literally feeling, you're really good at feeling yourself and your body, then it's easier to receive that message, whoever it is that is giving you in those realms. Because it can be a lot of your guides, or it can be anybody, even not the good ones, let's say. So you need to be prepared for those, and you need to be comfortable in your body. So that's what I mean about the Pluto and the Scorpio part.
How about Pluto in the ninth house? I mean, it brings along a higher sense of perception, and clairvoyance is possible. I mean, with that placement, Pluto in the ninth house, and because it perhaps stems from a higher level of consciousness.
I would love to have, I guess, something there to support it a little bit, maybe some
Yes, if it's
moon
well
or
aspected, yeah.
Neptune aspect or something.
Yeah. So the houses here, I think if we want to summarize, it will be like 4, 8, 12.
Mm-hmm. Super important.
First house, of course, because it's referring third and ninth. So this will be the houses you will look for if you want to check your own charts. And I think to summarize also, like the Sun, Moon, Mercury in aspect to Neptune.
Oh, yes.
Those will be important for clairvoyant capabilities. But I also want to mention about Uranus and Pluto aspects as well, because I've got a few friends who are born in the mid-60s. They have this Uranus and Pluto conjunction in Virgo. And during that period, these two planets are also opposing Chiron in Pisces at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sometimes joined by Saturn also in Pisces for like for a period of time. So they also have, I found that, because through conversations with some of them do acknowledge their latent clairvoyant abilities. And those can well be at their disposal to develop if they want to. But there's almost like a catch, because that Uranus Pluto conjunction in Virgo on one hand can really grant a person with like extrasensory perception, because Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury, and now it's conjunct Pluto. It gives you that permeable lens into seeing things with a higher level of perception. But then, since it's opposing Chiron in Pisces, there's a natural disconnection with spirit, which is Chiron in Pisces' meaning, at least initially. And so it may cause kind of pain, wounds, inner sufferings, like blame everything to spirit. Like, why do you they may see this clairvoyant ability as represented by Uranus, Pluto in Virgo conjunction as a curse. And they blame everything to God or spirit for that matter. Mm-hmm. And
like
it may cause one to...
Wounded by spirit.
Wounded by spirit. And it may make someone like refuse to acknowledge one's latent gift of clairvoyance for that matter. And why I want to mention this is because people who are born in the mid-60s, they would have by now gone through their... Well, I mean, they should have gone through their Chiron return because they're over 50, 51 years old. Mm-hmm. And when you reach like your 50s, it's almost like there's this new level of embodiment of what you initially rejected or what you feel ashamed about. And because I've got a few clients who's born in that generation, and when I look at that chart, it's like one of the questions I ask them will be, how do you feel about your latent clair abilities? And they gave like the answers that I've gotten is of a huge range, and most of them actually denied such existence within them until they have hit their Saturn opposition, which happens like in their 40s. Because part of that configuration in that generation has got Saturn in Pisces passing back and forth that three planetary bodies. So it's usually in their 40s when they finally embody that as well.
I wanted to mention Saturn as well, because I think what I've seen is whenever Saturn is in a hard aspect to these, let's say, indicators,
right.
Whatever it is, there can be again some fear, suppression, not really wanting to know about it, it's here but it's not here, kind of thing. So it's sometimes it's good when Donny mentioned that an astrologer asks, how do you feel about it? Are you moving towards those? What are the fears associated with it? What do you think about it? Because these gifts can be used really, well in the world and in a practical way. So, why not do it? Why not go a little bit towards them at least?
Yeah. And last but not least, I think I've got Uranus trine Pluto. That's a lovely one to have. Or Uranus sextile Pluto. This can really give someone an easier outlet on some level it's a latency because we're talking about sextile and a trine. But it'll be easier for these people when these two planets are also concurrently linked to like perhaps Sun, Moon, Mercury in particular, or they are like water sign houses, 3rd and 9th axis, and also the ascendant. When I talk about such houses, it's not only planets in those houses, but they are rulers as well. Mm-hmm. This can really bring them an easier way of integrating, like looking under the surface and having that eureka moment. This can be literally like extrasensory seeing That's what I feel with Uranus particularly. Seeing into the invisible realm, Uranus and Pluto.
Yeah.
And I think I've mostly covered what I wanted to say. Do you have anything to add to this?
I think I have said most of what I'm just a little wary of the time, and that we're doing more of these. So I want to I want to keep something for the next ones as well.
Yeah.
Because guys, we're going to at least planning or doing, around total of 4 of these. So there's much more information coming your way as well. And
I mean, it's a huge topic in itself.
huge.
There are like books and a lot of webinars that's conducted around this, be it like, some of them actually bring in anagram. I wonder if have you heard of anagram, Ian?
Yeah, I've heard.
Like there's certain anagram types that's more predisposed to have clear abilities as well. And some are tied with that, and some are tied to personality types. But I do find that the most direct way to find out whether someone that has clear abilities would be to look at their natal charts.
I agree.
And the more, because it's like, like your map is right in front of you, personal map, and all your planets are laid out in a certain way, and you just like start listing, all the possibilities that we mentioned in the video. And the more that you have what we talked about in this video, the more you're predisposed to having this. It doesn't mean you are, you'll be working as a psychic, unless of course the 10th house is involved.
Yeah,
but
ruler of the 10th in the 12th, or some indicators there, connections.
Some indicators. But having said that, but even the 10th house ruler in the 12th, it may or may not be used on a professional level.
Yep.
It may be also like used in terms of, for people who like to research, they may just dream of a certain research paper the other night and say, oh, I just came across this. You know what I mean? Like,
you can easily be a scientist, you can easily be a scientist.
That as well. So there's really a lot of things to unpack. I hope that the audience, have at least a kind of, hopefully find some closure of sorts and some kind of acknowledgement within themselves to work with it co-creatively. Because I think one of the main motivations we want to bring this series out is that we are living in a current world that we find more and more unreliable for us, and what is inside us we can definitely rely on. And this is one of those things that will come in handy to help you navigate your life. I think it's even more important this few years, when we are transitioning.
Well,
in a lot of ways collectively.
I'm definitely on board with this. And guys, take these indications and indicators and what we said. And if you're new to the journey, start testing it out a little bit. You gradually go into your dreams, write them down, visual, see if you can see with your third eye, slowly start meditations and stuff like that, and start seeing if these images are true and the dreams come true, and how can you use this in the real world, and maybe it will start to help you in making decisions. Maybe you hear something about the media, but in your mind's eye you see something entirely different, and you see that the mind's eye came true and the media was maybe not so true. And then you can see that this can actually help you in the real world as well.
And last but not least, I think the polarity axis of Pisces involves also Virgo. So if you know that you've got some clairvoyant capabilities and all that, don't straight away go into fear. I think that's I think you have to ask yourself, how do you use it practically and go into the Virgo realm?
Definitely.
And how do you maybe after this video, you'll be able to dissect back better, which is Virgo, whether you have this in your chart. And if you have, work with it. Don't run away from it. And Virgo is also about cultivating a habit. So just like what Ian said, like perhaps cultivate a habit of going into meditation or meditative practices, or just have a practice that helps you to go into inner stillness.
Very important in those realms to even receive those messages and to
Yes.
get clear with these
Yes.
messages as well.
Yes, and you'll be using your Virgo part of your chart to actually put things cohesively together. Because that information arrangement is all about Virgo energy, and that's the polar opposite in terms of access to Pisces. Anything to add to that?
No, I think I'm good. I think we gave a lot of things to chew, for people.
Yeah.
And if you want to get a reading with us, with me and Donny, the links will be down below.
Yep, in the description box.
In the description box. And I know, see you soon in another, let's say, clairvoyant, psychic, intuitive gift video.
Well, I think why not we call it the Psychic Intuitive series.
Psychic Intuitive series, very good, very good.
And we shall name this Clairvoyance, and let's see what the other Claire abilities want to cover after that.
Very good. Thanks, guys.
Right, okay.
And see you
till next time.
Yeah. Bye.